Hello and welcome to the PowerFish podcast. I'm Fish.
And I'm Ben. I took a substance and something happened.
It's a good cold open.
Yeah, so I've got a story to tell. I've had an insight into my own mind. So I was at a friend's house and they had an edible. Now, let me tell you, I'm not an experienced pothead. I've been high, specifically weed high, once ever in my life. And I've told you this story. As some of you might know, we are disc golfers. And we were playing, I was with a group of friends. And we were playing a very tough technical course, Harmony Bends in Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
You know that one. That's a tough one. And my pothead friend had a just absolutely dashing looking Rice Krispie treat in the dash of his
Did it
truck.
make you blush? Did it?
It did. And he saw me looking at it and he offered me, hey, you want that? You want to bite that? I'm like, frick yeah, dude. And I ate the sucker. He offered it to me. He had a surprise on his face because he knows that I'm not a pot smoker.
Yeah.
He knows that I'm not well, in this case, it wouldn't be smoking. It'd be pot eating. He knows I'm not a high guy, is what I'm trying to say. And he was surprised that I was so willing because I didn't know that it was inedible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And he told me afterwards, I'm like, pardon? Excuse me? So I was just like, well, I have to accept it because I can't pump my stomach right now. So I ate it, and it was a pretty high dose. And it was, I can't tell you the exact dose, but for someone that's never been high, it was a lot. And as edibles do, it took a while, like about an hour before you start feeling anything. And when it did, the timeline was I ate it about 10 minutes before we started playing. When it kicked in, the precision that I felt in my ability to throw a disc was unmatched. It was the best disc golf so far I have ever played. I think the round, so quick schooling on ratings in disc golf. 1,000 rated is like really, really good. About 1040, 1050 is like top pro. 950 is like pretty good. 900 and below is like intermediate down. I think the round rating after it was nearly 1,000. It was like 980 something.
Jeez.
Which is, for me, that's crazy. I'm a 900 golfer. So I can't explain it to this day. I felt like I was totally baked. Absolutely just destroyed. Like the eyes, I got the whole like heavy eyelids thing going on. Like I was baked. But the precision, the attunement I had to my body was just something I had never felt before. And my disc golf game skyrocketed from that. And that was about 2.5 to 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, I was at a friend's house and she had an edible. And I have not been high since this disc golf moment. And I have told myself, I need to try it again because with the overwhelmingly positive experience of it last time, it's something I should probably try again just to sort of tread the waters of more.
Sure.
So, I was like, fine, I'll try it. And it was a cookie this time. She took one half, I took the other half. I think the dosage was all weighed on her side of the cookie because she was plastered, and I, over about an hour to an hour and a half after it kicked in, I felt like something was different, but
Hmm.
it wasn't obvious what. So this has to do the experience has a lot to do with me having been more into meditation lately. And as I ate this and it started to slowly come to me, it was, well, let me narrow in on the dosage first. What it was like is if you take like one shot of something alcoholic, of like vodka, that's not enough to really even know that you're drunk. But it is enough to affect your personality so that you don't feel sort of anxious. It's the lubricant level of intoxication.
Yeah.
If you were just to analyze yourself in the moment, you wouldn't immediately know that you've drank anything, but you would know that you're acting a little bit more open and loose. It was about that, but for weed. So what eventually happened was, as it started to kick in, my memory of the past started changing.
Weird. Okay.
So how it felt to think of something I had said mere moments ago. Like me and her were in conversation just talking about stuff. And for me to stop and think about literally something I had said moments ago, it felt like it was a memory from somebody else. It felt like that was not me enacting that thing, saying those words literally moments ago.
So like a disassociation.
Sort of, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And it was, I had to stop and really think about this, because not only did just recent memories start becoming disassociated from the actions I'm making right now, but God, language is not equipped to be able to describe things like this when it comes to mental states. It felt like I had a grasp on what having no free will feels like, if that makes any sense. In the present moment, as in what I was doing, the active moment felt mostly normal. But as soon as that present became past and it was a memory that I could recall, it felt like the disassociation that I had with it in respect to it felt like it was somebody else's memory. Felt like there was no me there doing that action. There was no like homunculus in my head making my moves for me. There was no, it was simply my body making actions in response to stimulus. That's what it felt like. It felt like what no free will should feel like, I think.
Or the illusion.
Yeah. It's like the illusion of my choices being made through an act of weighing like decisions in conscious thought. It felt like that had no role. It felt like that was just not a factor here. But it was weird because it was only in very recent memory. It didn't feel like that in the moment. It was so bizarre. And what I've told myself when I was experiencing this and sort of thinking about it in the moment, I was like, in the future, I need to do this sort of microdose of weed, and I need to meditate while I am just ever so slightly high.
Mhm.
because it felt so like, I don't know. It was nothing but good. I'll tell you that. It was a very, very bizarre experience for sure. The falling away of the illusion of free will in recent memory was just, yeah, it was weird. But it's weird because being sober right now, thinking back to those actions, now it just seems like a normal memory of
Mhm.
me never having been high. But when I was high, thinking about past actions of when I was also high, it felt like there was no me doing the actions. It felt like it was just a person, a biological being responding to stimulus around him, and there's nothing more to it than that.
I'll tell you this much, and I have no basis of relation to the world of really any sort of drug use outside of prescription medication, and even that in prescribed doses. Which
Nothing
is so,
exciting.
So nothing too exciting here.
Yeah.
My only relation to that at all would be I have once in my life. I'm pretty straight edge. I got a little tipsy at one point in time, and then that didn't produce that feeling in me. I was pretty felt in control of the situation. There was no dissociation or anything like that. What that feeling reminds me of is the feeling that you get, or hearing about that feeling reminds me of the feeling that I have had when I'm doing an action that I've done many times, and you're present in the moment, but the actions you're doing happen naturally without any cognitive thought. Muscle memories.
Right.
That is what that reminds me of.
It wasn't exactly like that, but that's probably the closest sober mindset I could relate to it.
Yeah.
With that, yeah, that's pretty close. It is sort of like if you work a warehouse job or like an office job. A lot of the times, your conscious thought is somewhere entirely different from your subconscious thought and action.
Mm-hmm.
Because your body is not working from a point of conscious thought. It's your body is acting based on pretty much only subconscious processing, muscle memory, as you said.
Am I gonna bring up Louis C.K. for the third week in a row? Listen. I'm sorry, guys. He has a bit where he talks about this exact subject. It's crazy.
It's crazy that we keep coming to Louis C.K. bits.
See, he has a bit where he talks about getting high and driving, and he's driving the car, but he's completely disassociated from the actions of driving a car. It is being driven. He is doing the actions, as in the car is being successfully driven, but his mind is not kind of in that. He's focusing on other things. He's thinking about other things, but the act of driving is not something he is consciously making an effort towards.
I would say that's kind of just driving in general.
I'm not explaining it well. He goes into a little bit more depth than that. It's like he's I don't know, completely disassociated. I don't feel like that whenever I drive though. I don't feel completely disassociated.
I don't feel completely disassociated.
This was what he was talking about. Like he felt like he didn't even need to look up as in a way. Completely like as if by something miraculous he survived, even though his body was still carrying out the motions.
That's interesting. Yeah, but, I mean, I would say for most people's driving experience, especially on road trips, usually they're not thinking about the road and the car, but they're not not disassociated from themselves.
Unless you go into Kansas City.
Oh my God.
And you got to be on your A game.
Then you got to be on your A game. You got to be on your A plus game. Like, yeah, Kansas City, There's only 16 lanes that you have to worry about, all going to mutually exclusive locations. And if you're in the wrong one, that's a 13-hour detour.
Yeah, you'll go from 20 lanes down to 1.
Yeah, in a quarter mile of distance. Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's enough about stand-up comedy. Good bit, but that's the only relation I had to that my own experience, and then hearing that kind of recount.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though, the idea of dissociation as a byproduct of being high.
Yeah.
I've heard of that, but I've never heard of it in a context captured in a meditative way.
Yeah. That's why I want to do this again, except really just sit down with myself. Just sit down with my thoughts and really feel the just inner texture of my mind in that moment. Because I have nothing against being high. I don't really like smoking because it just stinks booty ass.
It stinks.
I don't like the image of it either. Like vaping, smoking. This is an antiquated view, but like it's just not. I have an unjustified association with the image of smoking pot with laziness and just people that have no drive, and which is not at all justified, because the guy that I had the Rice Krispie treat from, Seth,
yeah,
he is a total pothead. But if you said that guy did not have absolute drive and motivation to do everything, you'd be fooling yourself. So like, it's an unjustified view, but
right.
Yeah. I just don't. But the smell alone is enough for me to not want to do it.
Yeah.
I'll stick to edibles.
Yeah. So I mentioned I'm a pretty straight edge guy. I grew up in the kind of 2000s drug scare kind of mentality.
The drug war, unjustified.
Yeah. So
stuff.
I mean, I grew up being told every day, don't do drugs. Drugs ruin your life.
Right.
Now,
because that's what the people that were telling you.
What's absolutely hilarious to me is in a moment, it went from drugs are bad, don't do drugs, to my parents do drugs recreationally. Like it's mainly medicinal, but also to help with anxiety and stuff like that. In a moment, that changed, and I was stuck because it was forced upon me. This mentality. So now the people that forced that mentality upon me are now saying, you should try weed. You should take some weed. You want to take an edible? We have edibles. And I'm just like, no, drugs are bad. What are you doing? So I went from on the topic of growth, I went from, I won't even speak to a person who takes a lot of drugs because they're bad people, to I've grown up. I now know that that's not true, but I still hold within me, I guess you could call it prejudice. I don't know. That feels like maybe a little bit too harsh. But like, I don't like in the context of a relationship, I'll date somebody who partakes, but if they're big into smoking it, I can't, bro. It's the smell. And for me too, it's the image.
Yeah. There's something about the image.
And I know that it's not
it's just
fair
crap
necessarily.
We grew up with.
Right. There is something to be said about smoking anything is not good for your lungs. Now, if we're talking weed versus cigarettes, a weed is much better.
Yeah.
Right. But smoking anything is...
You'd be hard-pressed to hurt yourself smoking weed.
Right. But the smell is disgusting.
There's a reason people compare it to skunk.
It's skunky is what it is.
It's because it smells like it.
Well, anyway, drugs are good, moderation. Do whatever you want. That's my new philosophy.
Right. Yeah, this definitely... I don't think it's going to be another 3-year gap between trying weed. I don't think because I don't think I would have had these insights had I not done a lot of meditation and prior research into the nature of mind and things like that with regards to free will and the self. I don't think I would have had these insights had I not done this research beforehand. But now that I have, I think there is a door inside the palace of being high that is open now that just simply was not open before, that I think I want to walk through again.
I'll tell you what, and we'll revisit this topic because I still have my reservations, but I know in my heart that partaking in marijuana is something that I should try. It's not. It's not a moral thing. It's not. This is what good people do. Good people try marijuana. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's just as an experience, because honestly, I have a lot of judgment wrapped up in it. A lot of it was forced upon me.
Right.
I think it's unfair to be judgmental until I have tried. That's my. Now, if you want to be judgmental because somebody shoots up heroin every day, yeah, I'm not saying you got to try it to be judgmental of that necessarily.
Right. And that's just a totally, the fact that those two things can be classed under the same word as drugs is a crime because they're not the same.
No, right. It's very different applications. And people say all the time, anything in moderation. And I think that's pretty much true.
Oh yeah.
Maybe
absolutely.
even something like heroin.
Yeah.
The appropriate dosage of that is going to be absolutely minuscule.
Any opioid, that is. It's the thing is with something like heroin and like oxycodone and just any opioid is they just completely fill. I recently watched a video on the science behind this. The opioid receptor in your body, I think, is something that's only periodically supposed to be filled by your brain in small quantities and at certain times, like after hard work.
Yeah.
And then if you inject heroin, it gets absolutely just completely rushed throughout your whole body in a dosage that your body couldn't even pretend to produce half of. So if you inject it for the first time, it's literally the highest point of happiness that you possibly can feel. Just literally, it can not get higher. Like orgasms, get out of here. Give me a shot of this. It cannot get higher than this. But the problem is, after your very first shot, immediately you start building a tolerance, and you need a higher dose to get to that point the next time.
Jeez.
Immediately after that. But the thing is, when you experience the highest high of happiness and satisfaction and bliss that you possibly can, it's almost impossible to not want to do that again,
dude.
Because when you experience that, when the bar is that high, in perspective, everything else in life, your previous highest high looks real low now. So like that's the problem with something like that.
Yeah, I can tell you for a certainty that's something I want no part of.
Right.
I'll do
psychedelics, but I'm never gonna do an opioid.
I don't need any help realizing that day-to-day actions are
mundane.
Yeah. I don't want to experience the greatest joy in life and then just be like, oh, well, I guess I was looking forward to this thing, but
now everything else in comparison seems just blah. Right. Yeah. Like I'm never gonna touch something like that with a 10-foot pole.
We're gonna get a heroin addict in the comments and being like, "That's not how it is." Or maybe they know. Maybe they'll say that's exactly how it is. Hey, if you're addicted to heroin,
drop a comment.
Drop a comment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I am definitely open to one. The door to weed has just been opened quite a bit more. It already was open because, like I said, my first experience was just so positive the first time, athletically speaking, not even mentally speaking. And now that I've had a extremely positive experience mentally speaking from it, it's in my future again. Maybe at a higher dose, maybe at the same dose, we'll see. But yeah.
Now, this can only come with time. But if you had to guess for you, what does moderation look like for something like pot?
I mean, it depends on the person. It depends on their lifestyle. But
For you specifically.
For me specifically, a moderation, I can tell you once every 3 years is a lot less than moderation.
That's plenty of, that's plenty of time between.
I would say,
like, are you a special occasions guy? You a weekly guy, you think?
Well, let me describe my current relationship with recreational sort of substances. Alcohol is something I'm not opposed to, even though I probably should be, because compared to almost all drugs short of opioids, it's like way more disastrous for your health.
Yeah, no, alcohol is poison.
Yeah, you could take MDMA, psilocybin, DMT, all these psychedelics you want, weed, whatever, and it's not gonna drop a coin in health terms to alcohol. Like, that'll destroy you faster than anything. But so I probably should be opposed to it, but in moderation, like I said, I'm not. But my relationship with alcohol it's an occasion thing, and last time I have drank alcohol it's been over a year. My 20s, I think it was my 22nd birthday. And I'm recently 24 now. It might have been on New Year's of 2023. It might have been. But when I do drink, no, it was right before New Year's of 2023. I think, because I was in Des Moines with Kale.
Yep, I remember that. Yep.
So it's been a year and some change, year and a half. I don't drink much more than that. Once a year, maybe twice tops.
Yeah.
And that is more than plenty for me. But that's also because I don't really get, other than the washing away of the anxious demeanor. Other than that, I don't really get any benefits from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do get a lot of downsides. The next night of sleep, there's nothing happening there. No, you better not expect sleep after you drink. Or after honestly, weed is not good for your sleep either. But yeah, so maybe in regards to weed, I probably, if I can get an experience like that once, moderation would probably be once every few months.
It's not bad. Yeah, that's
probably.
It's enough to not build.
I don't want a tolerance.
You wouldn't be building a tolerance, and you wouldn't be building a reliance either.
Right. Yeah. I don't want either of those things. And I also, one thing that it has showed me is, yeah, I really liked the feeling of sort of the disassociation of self and the washing away of the illusion of, conscious decision making. But it also allows me to value having a sober mind, which I value a lot.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, weed is definitely in my future again, though. Absolutely. After that experience, for sure.
Yeah, no, I would say as a podcast, we are certainly not anti-drug.
No, except you and your Christian bullshit.
Yeah, my Christian bullshit days. Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I
And
would say
me included in that.
I would say in my Christian bullshit days, thoroughly anti-drugs. Now,
I mean, when we were growing up, they'd always show us pictures of like, this is somebody that's sober, and then show them with like a melted off face, having hit by a nuke, blown up, drowned, and shit.
yeah,
Right next to them, this is them after one microdosing of caffeine.
Yeah.
They were, the demonization of drugs was crazy back when we were growing up, early and late 2000s.
yeah. I mean, it's in a lot of ways relatable to propaganda. In a you can imagine a country like North Korea and how they demonize, well, pretty much anybody else. In that sort of way, you be difficult to blame a citizen for feeling resentment towards other nations when that's the identity that they were built upon.
Right.
But yeah, no, sure. There's utility in substances of the sort. So a mind altering. What's a nicer word for that? What am I looking for here? Mind expanding? I don't know.
I would consider them an expansion of consciousness, but I mean,
it's not like you're learning new things.
No,
but
you are at the same time about yourself.
I would say if you're learning anything, it's about yourself.
Yeah,
you're not expanding your mind through the conventional sense, but you're maybe getting more in touch with your inner being.
Right. One thing I think is DMT has had. No, it was MDMA. Has had just unbelievably positive effects with like people with PTSD. Like,
yeah,
of course, there are people that don't respond well. There
You're
always
gonna
will
have
be.
that, yeah.
There always will be. But the cost to benefit analysis is the benefit is a much taller tower than the cost. It's like cars.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody died from cars before we had cars, but there was less deaths before cars came around. But the benefits just outweigh it too much.
Yeah,
it's like that kind of situation. But
no, for sure.
Yeah, when people with PTSD would take MDMA, I have heard it described as like sort of being able to relive the moment that is the cause of their PTSD, but live it out in a different way that allows their brain to sort of rebuild the emotion that is associated with that memory and make it a different memory that has a different outcome, which is, mind you, what dreams are supposed to do. But specifically with PTSD people, I think something's wrong with like their REM cycles, and when they go into REM sleep, whatever part allows them to remove the emotion from memory is broken, and they just can't do it. Every time they rethink the memory, the same emotion just comes rushing back that they had during the memory, which is what PTSD is. So if you have a memory that you don't like to think about, get good sleep.
Yeah.
Because that is literally the direct cause to healing the past.
I literally thought you were about to say, if you have a memory that you don't like, get rid of it. That's what I thought
get rid of it. Get it out.
I was like, that might be true, but
take drugs. Get rid of it. No. Yeah, get good sleep. That is what heals past wounds. Unless the past wound is a current wound with like somebody.
Yeah.
Then you got to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, because then you have people who take drugs to escape from traumatic things, and that's
a not good thing. That's a not good way to use drugs.
It's a really fine line between a good use and a bad use.
Right. Yeah, recreationally it's fine, but if you're using it as a sort of tool of avoidance for something that you shouldn't be avoiding, then yeah, maybe don't do that. PowerFish promise. Don't
There
do
you
that.
go. Well, hey, so let me ask you this: what's a subject we like to talk about? This is a complete change of gears.
Let's
by the way.
see. What have we well, consciousness and philosophy and free will and mind and space and black holes, physics and science.
All right. Well, let me refine your search here a little bit. As of when this goes up, 2 episodes ago, what do we talk about?
That's so long ago, dude. That might as well be a distant memory.
Do you need a hint?
I need a hint.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you. 2 episodes ago was the debate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Have you? So we talked a lot about religion.
Religion. How did I not say that?
That was
What
that was
frick?
the subject of that of that their debate. Right. Now, what's the problem with Christianity? Right.
Dumbass.
Other than all of them, but what's the main problem is we can't talk to these figures. We can't talk to Moses. Right.
Mm-hmm. Can't talk to these religious prodigies.
But what if you could?
A lot of questions would be answered.
An interesting proposition. Well, what if I told you through the power of artificial intelligence, we can get a glimpse into the lives of famous Bible figures?
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And I'm going to send you a video.
I want to talk to, man, we could talk to Jesus. Hey, did you come back from the dead? Are you God? Talk to Moses. Hey,
Yeah.
did you build a boat that was big? And then repopulate the rest of the world with just your family?
Well, you watch that video and we'll throw it up on screen as well.
Yo, fam, they don't know that G-O-D is about to BRB. These Philistines thought they could flex on me. Big mistake. I just took some pre-workout and finna bring the house down. That's good, fam. Your boy David here, about to yeet this little stone at Goliath and see what happens. Okay, so I told y'all to trust the process, but no, y'all wanted to stay in Egypt stacking bricks. Yo, it's Shadrach. This random dude just showed up. It's getting lit in here.
I got the horses in the back. Horse tack is attached. Hat is matte black. Got the boots that's black to match.
Day 2 in the tomb. No Wi-Fi, no snacks. Just kind of waiting for God to respawn me.
You know I'm a daddy's boy. He's got me in this Technicolor drip. Brother's so jelly right now. They're looking a little sus.
I'm supposed to say that God got me pregnant? Yeah, there's no way my parents are buying this story.
I would like to formally apologize to God, the sailors, and this whale. Sorry, dude. I just took a poop over there.
Dude, now that is sick.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Looking kind of sus.
I've never seen a better use case of artificial
Dude,
intelligence.
AI. Oh, man. I'm in favor of it now. Holy crap. Yeah, we saw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
And Abednego.
And
Yeah.
the angel. He was cooking.
They were in the furnace.
Yeah, that was pretty sick, dude. That's AI. Only recently have they been able to create video with audio to go with it. And holy crap. What we just saw, that is the worst AI is going to be from here on out.
Yeah.
It's only going to get better.
And
that's crazy
and
good.
that's bordering on believable if it wasn't completely not believable.
Yeah.
If the subject matter was more believable, I would believe it.
Right.
What
Well,
you
I
say?
mean, you could mistake that for a bunch of dudes just getting together to film some funny ha-has.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, absolutely. That's hilarious. Been in the tomb. No Wi-Fi. Dude, poor Jesus, bro.
Dude, no Wi-Fi, no snacks.
Waiting for God to respawn him.
Well,
That's hilarious.
so on the subject of that, though, there's honestly, with the advancements in video AI with sound, there's been a lot of talk about the dead internet theory.
Oh yeah.
Have you?
That just seems to be, as the days go on, that just seems more and more inevitable. honestly. Like AI eventually, the moment AI starts pulling its AI results from data that was previously generated by AI,
Yeah.
we're fricked. Once that starts happening, we're fricked.
I mean, and that could easily happen now.
yeah, it might be.
Because you already know that AI is just pulling from random sources.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Was that you and I looked at that? Where it pulled from Reddit and it had a funny thing.
Maybe.
Hold on, let me see if I can find that. No, I won't be able to find it. I didn't save it. So it was I gotta remember, this was probably a month ago that I saw this. It was an AI generated like Gemini result.
Yeah.
About
Those are so bad.
about some issue. And it goes through the issue. Here's the fix. And then it said, one Reddit user said, kill yourself. That's what it said.
Oh,
and
my
that
God.
was a completely acceptable answer to Gemini.
How did it not like? How did that not like flag something? That's crazy.
I don't know. But yeah, so all that to say, we know it's just pulling from random Reddit threads. And
Right.
there's no way to curate that those posts are not generated.
Right. Yeah. Dude, Meta has been diving headfirst into the slop.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the Zuck has been like encouraging more and more AI posts on Facebook, which
Why?
I don't know. He certainly had a reason that probably wasn't justified, but
I mean, I guess
Yeah.
from a business standpoint, it'll up total engagement because it's just more.
It's just
crap's
more
getting
stuff.
posted. Yeah.
But I mean, I guess when you're Zuck and you own a public company, the only thing you care about is number go up,
Yeah.
stock go up.
Big number up.
So if investors see more interaction, that means more users, number go up,
Yeah.
and then Zuck happy. Once you get to that level, I don't think you really care about what actually happens to your social media service. You just care that it gets bigger number better.
Bigger number better.
Bigger
That's
number
what I have to
better.
say.
That's the stock. If you just know that, you can win the stock market. You can beat the market. Bigger number better. Reddit went downhill when they went public.
Yeah, that was a big.
When they IPO'd, everybody was pissed.
Yeah, I was very active on Reddit at that time, and
Mhm.
people were just kind of losing their minds about it. It's
Well, the
terrible changes. though.
Terrible, because the disaster started happening almost immediately after. They
Mm.
pulled their
Yeah, whatever
they
that
pulled their
was.
thing.
I don't know what you're talking. I don't remember this particular thing you're trying
They
to reference.
pull what is the thing that other users have access to that allows them to build off of their platform? What is that called?
Why is APO coming to mind? That's not right.
I keep thinking IP, but it's not IP.
No,
It's they're
well, Apollo was one of the really popular ones.
yeah, that was yeah. And I used one of the third party Reddit apps that was killed when they did that. They're oh my god.
I'm looking.
Dude, I know this.
API. That's
API.
not APO. API.
I kept thinking IP. We were close. I mean, I do P, but not. Yeah. Anyway, their API. They pulled their API from public use and put it behind a insane paywall that nobody could afford.
I remember this, and the people just came out and they're like, "Yeah, we can't afford that." That's
Yeah,
ridiculous."
it killed off tons of apps.
Which was the intention.
Yes, that was the entire intention, because they wanted to get users on the Reddit app because that shows more users and bigger number better.
Yeah, big number better.
Bigger number better, because they had investors then and they were a public company. Dude, once companies IPO, that's when the shitification starts. Almost all the time. Because now they are obligated and can literally be sued if they do not do everything they can to maximize their profits. Why would they want to do that? I know it's because the money that investors give, I know why. It's because money. It's always money.
My question is, were they not making enough money, or is the money they're bringing in by getting investors?
But that's not the question. That's not the question to ask. Enough money is not even a concept.
But okay, but by getting investors that they then have to pay back some amount through dividends, are they
I don't know
making?
if their stock paid dividends, but
Oh, I have no idea. But are they making more money off of that route than to not to, and just make more monetary gaining decisions?
100%. Because if they didn't go public, then that means the only people that would invest were private investors and not people that could just open up Fidelity and then buy some stock.
Right. And that's more money than just having a better monetization strategy on the app.
Right.
Okay.
Because now there's literally hundreds of more people that are investing in the company because it's public stock now.
Interesting.
So they just have many more people's worth of their investment money into this company too. Yeah. So
That sounds hideous.
And if they don't make stupid decisions like pulling the API to show investors through these mandatory quarterly earnings calls now, that's something that they don't have to do as a private company, is earnings calls. You don't have to blast your earnings reports out into the ether if you're a private company.
Right.
But every quarter it is now the law to just absolutely dump out your earnings report. And if investors see that if number go down, they pull money. But if number go up, and as investors, if there are enough of them that can buy enough shares of this company, they can have actual like board decision influence. And that is why if the employees of the company are not doing everything they can to maximize profits, and the top investors, if they have enough stock, could literally just fire the CEO if they wanted to. Like that's something that like hedge funds do. Hedge funds can literally buy out a stock from a public company and just take over the company if they wanted to, because hedge funds have billions and billions of dollars.
That's insane. Yeah, we have both worked for a public company, and you feel that trickle down effect.
Yes,
even at the lower levels.
Even at the lower levels, you just the lack of care at the individual store. Like we worked at a Dick's Sporting Goods, and
Are they public?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That wasn't what I was referencing, but also that. Then.
Yeah, Dick's Sporting Goods was this way as well, where there are decisions that are made at the top that are just anti-employee or anti-customer, but the effects that they have equal bigger number.
Yeah.
Bigger earnings, bigger profit, bigger revenue, bigger whatever it is. Less shrink, less, loss, less whatever. Just what they don't care about what happens to the people. They care about the earnings report and the numbers that are on it. That is the bottom line.
Yeah.
And it shows, and it sucks.
It does.
But they make more money because people buy the stock.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that in cellular sales.
Yeah. That too.
That was what I was referencing, and
that was arguably even worse.
We would see that a lot. It seemed about once a quarter. It seemed about that way. There would just be some rule change.
Mm-hmm.
It would come down the pipeline, and we would say, "Why?
This is so stupid."
And they would say, "This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't solve a problem. It's just different." And they would say, "Well, they changed things up. This is different.
Right.
This is different now for some reason." And maybe those decisions on a macro level had a butterfly effect that made number go up, but on individual level, it just made our lives harder.
Right. It made the customer's life worse or more difficult, or
when they changed over. I won't divulge too much information about like what company and what practice, but they made a previously non-contractual agreement contractual. They made a change. They made a change like that. And I remember going to management and I said, nobody wants this product. Why are you making it worse?
Right.
And of course, first level management's just like, oh, I didn't do it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But you know, why would they do this?
Yeah.
And I think that's the answer, is because it, for whatever reason, it made the number feel different, probably because it didn't convert to more sales. The sales were low to begin with. They've since sold out of that company that we were contractually obligated to sell products through, or of the products through that company. But yeah, at the time they made the product worse, seemingly intentionally.
Yeah.
And there must have been a reason, and I bet it was some sort of crap like that.
Yeah. They never was another really unfortunate one was Raspberry Pi.
Oh
They
yeah.
IPO'd, and I don't think their boards have been cheap since then. Like
That was the whole allure of that.
Yeah, that was why you got a Raspberry Pi, because it was cheap. You could get it for like double digits, just slap Linux on it and run it as whatever the hell you want to do with it. And
having little microcomputers around is awesome.
yeah, you can do cool things with those. And they IPO'd a couple years ago, and honestly, I just haven't even heard anything about them since. Probably because they don't sell them.
They were the talk of the town on like the Reddit forums that I would frequent.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to do this thing. I'll stick a Raspberry Pi in there. What do you know?
Yeah.
Whatever. So get this. Here's the link. Download, buy, purchase.
Right.
Ship.
You can use them as controllers and stuff, but yeah, I don't know much about them anymore, but because just I haven't seen them in the news, or I haven't seen anybody talking about them. So I just don't think that they're as the talk of the town as they used to be.
Yeah, I had a friend who got one. He was powerful enough to run like old arcade games on,
Yeah.
and he built like an arcade cabinet, and it ran off of a Raspberry Pi of some variety.
Yeah, technically the Raspberry Pi was my first computer before I built my first computer, actual computer. It was $10.
There you go.
Raspberry Pi for $10.
Pretty cheap for a computer.
Yeah, I got it for $10. I was like, I think I was like 12 or 13, because I built my computer when I was 14. So it was probably not long before that. I got it. I installed Ubuntu Linux on it, and I don't think I did much anything with it.
But you got it.
But I got it, and that was one of the things. That was one of my first like experiences with computer technology on a more in the weeds scale.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just like laptops that I didn't know how to do anything with, and a phone and stuff. An iPod Touch 4th generation, to be specific.
That's a good computer right there.
That's a computer. Dude. I was at a friend's house recently and they had an iPod Touch. I think it was a 5, which, if you remember, the iPod Touch 5 followed the footsteps of the iPhone 5 and got a little bit taller.
Mm.
And those things were big when they got tall. They were big. It fit like from the bottom of it lined up with the bottom of my phone. It got up to like that high. And it was the big one.
Yeah.
And the screen was just like, you could fit. It's tiny.
Well, those were around, correct me if I'm wrong, while Steve Jobs was still alive.
Yes.
Correct?
Steve Jobs died after the iPhone. I think it was shortly after the iPhone 5 came out.
Yeah. And he was a big proponent of keeping the phone small and devices
Single-handed.
small.
Yeah.
Yep.
Big. He was big on the single-handed stuff.
He was big on two things, probably more than two things, but two things that I can recall: single-handed, small, and no other input but finger.
Finger. Yeah.
Finger input only. He did not like the idea of a stylus at all.
Now an Apple Pencil exists.
Yep. Now maybe he, if he were to be alive, maybe would have adapted over time. But
the technology paradigm has shifted so
Yeah.
drastically since then. Who can possibly know what his vision would be today?
now I wonder though, if following Steve Jobs' death, if Apple had tried to continue with his vision alone as it was, and they kept making exclusively small phones, how would that shape the market? Would it change the market, or would they fall behind?
It's hard to know because the market. It's hard to know because of how much power Apple has over the market.
Yeah.
Like the removal of the headphone jack. That is ubiquitous now and did not used to be. But
People still are talking about that.
yeah. I mean,
And ain't nothing you can do about it anymore.
right,
Because
not
it's
anymore.
gone. But
And I mean, Apple's the reach that they have over the technology landscape, specifically phones, is just crazy. Like with the whole, what else did they start that just became the norm? There was obviously the headphone jack. There was wireless earbuds.
yeah.
True wireless earbuds.
Well, because they removed
the headphone jack, and they needed a way to sell them. They tried to say that the headphone jack needed to be removed for the sake of like battery space and waterproofing. And then someone got an iPhone. Yeah, and then someone got an iPhone 7 and actually added the headphone jack into it, and it worked perfectly fine with all the It's like they removed it because they wanted to sell AirPods. But I mean, the entire landscape of headphones now has changed because of that.
Yeah.
Entirely. All because of Apple. And the fact, I mean, well, they were the first to do the multi-touch heat capacitive touchscreen on a phone and have it the whole screen. They were the first. Smartphones as we know them today was first done by Apple.
Why am I remembering? I feel like I read somewhere, saw somewhere that IP was stolen from IBM. I believe.
Yeah, I could believe that.
I'm gonna look it up.
I've heard multi-touch display existed before the iPhone. They didn't invent the multi-touch, heat capacitive display, but
What did
the
Apple
implementation of it that they did, I believe, was novel at the time.
Oh, Apple and Steve Jobs steal from Xerox to battle Big Brother IBM. What'd they steal?
Steal from Xerox, a printer?
No, this is like.
What did Xerox do back in the day?
No,
All I know Xerox store is printers.
I'm gonna get to the bottom of this.
Yeah. Well,
I thought it was smartphone related.
I feel like I've heard that before, where Apple took something from somebody to make the iPhone.
Not that it's a huge deal, unless there was a patent on it, which in case that's a huge deal. But
dude, imagine they patented. Do you think they'd be able to patent like big screen touch smartphone?
I can't. Apple stole something. I have no idea. I doubt it. I mean, that's too broad, I would say. That's like a TV manufacturer trying to patent what a TV is.
Yeah.
Granted, there's a lot of patents out there. God, I wish my mind was better. I can't. There's something in my mind that I'm thinking that I'm just like, I remember hearing about a patent that. Well, I can't think of the big one, but I just thought of a new one. Something where a concept has not been revisited, even though it's dead, because of a patent. And so I frequent like retro emulation spaces. I've kind of talked about that a little bit before. Are you familiar with the? I think it's called the PSP Go. If you're familiar with the PSP, I'm
Of
sure.
course, I know the PSP. I don't know. I don't know anything about Go.
I think it was something Go, and it was like a little guy, maybe that big ish, and just a touch screen on top. And if you wanted to get to the controller bit, you'd slide it up, and you'd have a controller. And
Yeah.
yeah. So that thing's been dead forever.
Yeah.
But the patent on it is about to expire, or maybe just did. And there's a retro emulation company based out of China that just in the last week put out a promotion for a PSP Go like device with a new chipset. It's going to run Android, but it's just like that. Slides up. It's got controls in it. It's called the RG Slide. That's what it's called.
RG Slide.
RG Slide.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that. So and that makes me think that a sort of device concept as a whole can be patented.
Yeah, that's so unique though. Now, unless you're getting at what if they did it from the beginning before anybody else did
what
it?
if they released a?
They couldn't do it now.
No, of course not. I mean, in fact, now iPhones get their OLED panels from Samsung. So
yeah,
these are Samsung OLED panels. They've been.
If
doing
there's
that
one
since
thing
they
we
had
know
OLEDs.
about Samsung is they make a good panel.
They make a good panel. We've got OLED panels in our monitors from Samsung. You've got a Samsung OLED panel in your Samsung Galaxy phone.
Yeah.
I've got a Samsung OLED panel in my iPhone. Yeah, Samsung knows how to
If
make.
you've ever seen an OLED Samsung TV, you're about to knock your socks off.
Right. Samsung knows how to make an OLED panel. Or where was I going with that?
Right. Patents.
Yeah. So if they released a patent of the multi-touch display or something,
Yeah.
where would we be? I mean, if that was an option, I cannot fathom why they would not have done it.
Right. But is it possible? I don't know if it's happened, but is it possible that they were denied a patent because doing so would be worse for the consumer market? Is that possible? Can you be denied?
Can a patent be rejected due to anti-competitive practice?
I mean, certainly, because a company, a monopoly can be broken up due to anti-competition. Surely they could cut you off at the source.
Yeah, but can they reject it based on something that's novel? They didn't know that was going to become the norm.
I feel like even if they could, they probably wouldn't, because it's novel. Like
Right.
you said.
So like,
I don't know.
there's some legality here because, like I said, if that was an option, I can not imagine why they would not have done it. But they didn't do it, so I don't know, because it was not long after where Android started doing the same thing with the the Google came out with the Nexus and obviously the Samsung Galaxy. I think it was a Galaxy S as was the first Galaxy.
Mm.
I don't know if that's true or not.
That sounds accurate.
I think Galaxy S was their first like smartphone. But I don't know if that for sure. But yeah, anyway. We don't know enough about patents to know why they would not have done such a thing. But dude, so I started listening to Lights On Annika Harris.
Yeah.
And consciousness, your proposition of consciousness as a dimension,
mm-hmm.
She has proposed that before a couple years back in a paper. So she was talking to physicists about it and did the exact same thing that I did and compared it to the fact that
God, we're smart.
Dude, we're so smart.
Jeez.
A few years late, but the fact that the space-time fabric is a reality in our universe. It exists. It is there, but it is unobservable. It can't be seen. There is but there is nowhere in the universe where there is not space-time. Space-time is everywhere. And there's nowhere in the universe where there is more space-time here and less space-time over here. That's not how it is. It is simply just everywhere. The fabric is everywhere. It just bends differently based on where matter is. Matter tells it how to bend, and how it's bent tells matter how to move. They're inextricably linked that way, but we can't see any of it. And she was like, consciousness.
Is that what you said? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
basically how it was.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's about how we would say it.
Yeah.
Too, I think.
She's like, what if consciousness is a sort of field that is similar to this space-time fabric? Even though, I mean, space-time is not a field, it's a fabric. It's called a fabric for a reason. It's like a plane, but yeah, she was like, yeah.
That's difficult to wrap a mind around, isn't it?
Yeah.
A field of consciousness that is not physically based, but also is physically linked.
Yeah. Because, I mean, could you say space-time is physical?
It definitely is being implied that way. That it is a physical, non-tangible, but something physical in life in order to interact with matter. Could you say the same about consciousness? I don't feel like you
I don't think
could.
so. But you can't really say space-time is physical.
You can't, but it interacts with the physical realm
Yeah.
in a very specific way, in
Matter-
a very
yeah.
predictable way, in a lot of ways.
In a way that is predictable. So because of what is physical in the universe allows us to know that space-time is there.
Uh-huh.
For consciousness, it's kind of the other way around, isn't it? Because we know that we have felt experience, we know it's there, but we don't know of a thing that allows that it interacts with, that we can observe and measure and do science on. So it's kind of the reverse problem of space-time.
Consciousness, by the definition we pose, is something that we know that we possess.
Right.
And depending on your definition, it's something that other organic creatures possess.
Right. Sorry to cut you off, but that definition of consciousness was something I'm about 3/4 of the way through the book. I'm almost done with it. But every person, she talked to a lot of physicists. She talked to Brian Greene, Sean Carroll, the top minds of physics today. And every single time she found it notoriously difficult to define consciousness with all of them.
Yeah.
Even philosophers like Anil Seth and Suzanne Blackmore that do consciousness and mind philosophy. Like, they don't defining consciousness, getting a firm, strict definition was different for every single one of them and difficult every single time.
Right.
Like, she tries to just break it down to the bare minimum of simply felt experience. Just experience at all. The fact that it feels like something to be something. There is a feeling involved. Like the fact that it feels like something to see the color black or blue or you, or it feels like something, like, because there's a difference between.
Well, then we know for a fact, then, if that's the definition, that like a dog has consciousness.
No, absolutely we do not. This is, how can we know that the dog feels like something to be a dog?
Well, you said how it feels to see a thing.
Yeah.
A dog. You come home from work, a dog sees you, a dog happy.
Yeah. The chemicals that are associated with happiness are not the same thing as the feeling that's associated with that happening. Does that make sense? The chemicals that your brain produces when you're scared to have all the downstream effects of your body in fear are not the same thing as the feeling itself of fear. Because you can be unconscious and all the scared stuff can happen throughout your body and your mind, and the reactions from that It's all happening in your brain.
Yeah.
But the feeling of it in consciousness is a different thing. The fact that it feels like that is a different thing.
So the feeling of feelings.
Yeah. The feelings, obviously, feelings have a chemical reaction that are associated with them. We know this.
So in order to expand your if I'm not saying this is true, but if we were to try to expand consciousness to a dog in my example, it's not so much that they are happy that I am home. They would need to have a feeling about what it means to feel happy when I come home.
Pretty much, yeah. Which, by definition...
Which they could have, but we don't know.
Exactly. By definition, the only way we could know that exists is from ourselves. I can't possibly know that you have it. I can't possibly know that a dog has it. The feeling of these things. So that is why it is so impossible to sort of do science on it. Because the only way for sure that we know it exists is from anecdotal experience of it.
What's the we talked about it in the existential crisis iceberg. What's the one where you feel like you're the only real person and everybody else is not a simulation, but you're the only one existing truly?
Well, there was simulation theory, which is we are in a simulation.
Right, but that's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at something else.
There was idealism, which is the idea that matter around us is not actually a thing that exists. I'm not sure.
Look it up. Google.
There was the Boltzmann brain, where you could just be a spontaneously created brain due to entropy. And none of this is actually real. That sounds like what you're talking about. Maybe the Boltzmann brain?
Maybe.
But that was more directed at the idea of you being a
Solipsism?
Solipsism. What is that? I don't think that was in the iceberg.
We absolutely talked about it, though. Solipsism, from Latin, alone, and self, the philosophical idea that only one's mind is sure to exist.
Well,
we might not have talked about this, but this is what I'm referring to.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess in a way we're all solipsists because we can make a pretty sound guess that that's not accurate. Right. But
well, the only reason I bring this up is because I have a very, very specific memory of being in junior high or high school. And I went to a very small school, a very small Christian academy. But we had a guy there who went on to be my youth pastor, who I have mentioned before to you specifically. Good guy. Very open to challenge religious norms, I would say, in a very healthy way. He brought up the idea of solipsism, basically, to a bunch of like 13-year-olds. And I don't know if I call that
13-year-old do with that.
I don't know if I call that necessarily a healthy move, but he told us about this, and he's basically just like, so you're you, right? You're you, and you exist, and you walk around, you have thoughts, right? And then we're like, yeah. They go, well, how do you know that your friend has those thoughts? Well, they're my friend. We talk and stuff. Yeah, but like, that's just talking. You don't know what they think or if they think at all.
Right.
And then so another guy in the class was just like, well, I'm thinking is what he said. And then the teacher was just like, yeah, but that's what you would say, right? They would just say that. Are they really?
How do I know that you're
thinking? Do I know that you're thinking? And then everybody's just like, but I'm thinking. Like,
yeah. I don't know if a 13-year-old can grasp.
Point
that
being
level of philosophy.
is I think very closely related, if not exactly what we're talking about when we talk about knowing for a fact that somebody else is a conscious being. Or
absolutely.
That's exactly that idea. And you can't, because that exact example, two people can get together and we can, let's figure this out. Are you thinking? Yeah, I'm thinking. Well, I'm thinking too. Okay, proven. But you don't know.
Yeah, you can't actually prove anything because the brain can do all the things that replicate, everything that just happened. But the feeling of experiencing it is something separate from that. It's the what it feels like to have your hand chopped off is different from simply the pain of the all the neurons blowing up in your brain and the pain from the nerves and the connections between those. Yeah, that's happening, and the fear and the heart rate and all that stuff, everything would happen no matter what, whether you have consciousness or not. All that stuff would happen, but there is an experience with it. It feels like something that is different from simply those stuff.
How do we know? How could we know that that is not just the universal experience? How do we know that any being above a certain level of intelligence feels feelings, understands the feeling of feelings, and has an experience associated?
We can't. But the problem with you saying of a certain level of intelligence is
Where's the line?
where is the line? Because we could just say things with brains, things that can process information.
Right.
But the problem with that is even a worm's got a brain. It would be a hit or miss if you ask somebody on the street and you would say, is a worm conscious? I think you'd get pretty mixed results. But
yeah,
for all we know, the worm has the same level of consciousness as us. It just doesn't have the brain size to be able to process higher order emotions. And it certainly doesn't have the level of like receptors and pain receptors and stuff like that we do. So it might be conscious in the same way that we are. It just simply doesn't have the ability to crunch the data that we have. But
right. Yeah,
it's still got a brain. So there's an argument for consciousness in relation to brain there. But then you get into plants. Plants is what really mucks things up. Because she talks about plants quite a bit in this book.
they be doing complicated stuff.
So they've tested this stuff in labs now. A tree so it's got roots, and roots go actually pretty deep and pretty far, depending on the size of the tree.
Depending on the tree too.
Yeah, depending on the species of the tree as well. But what trees can do is shoot carbon through these suckers, and plants like carbon, helps them grow.
Yeah,
trees and surrounding plants can pump and do give more carbon to plants that need it more, and more carbon still to plants that came from seeds related to that tree.
nepotism.
Nepotism. Yeah, so even plants know who is their family. They know who needs help. Right? In this stuff, they don't have a brain. Where's the information processing happening? There is something going on there. And now this is where it probably wouldn't get mixed results, is if you ask somebody on the street, is a plant conscious? The majority answer would be no.
Right.
But when you say things like that, it's like, well, now I don't know. But it doesn't have a brain.
Just like a flower where it will, if put in a windowsill, will turn towards the sun.
Right, yeah. It knows where the photosynthesis power is coming from.
Yeah, it'll move itself.
Yeah.
It's like
it also will move itself to other plants. Plants can grow towards each other and stuff.
It's romantic.
Yeah.
Oh,
and there's a parasitic plant that mimics This is really weird. So these plants don't have brains, but somehow there's information processing happening here.
Yeah.
But there's a parasitic plant motherfricker. And it will, to get in, I can't remember this exactly, but I think what its purpose was to get into the stomachs of animals that ate a certain type of plant. And what it would do is, it looks like a vine, but it can mutate its shape. And somehow it's like a chameleon. It will mutate its shape to be the exact same shape as a plant that it's next to. And it can grow, it can expand itself up to 17 times its normal size to conform to the shape of a plant that it's next to, that this animal eats. So that the animal eats the parasite and parasite gets inside the animal. But it doesn't have eyes. It doesn't have eyes. It doesn't have skin that can feel the air and stuff. Yeah. It doesn't have any of these things, but it knows what the thing it's next to looks like.
That's weird.
That's so weird. That is so weird. This just goes to show, like, we think we know what happens in this world.
Yeah, that just seems like straight up magic.
It does.
Yeah.
It's so weird. We think we know how the world works. We think we know matter and atoms and stuff. And we know a lot, but holy frick, do we still not understand so much about our own world?
Yeah.
So like, and it's, who knows if that's consciousness or not. And if a plant's conscious and it doesn't even have a brain, then that just opens up the realm to all matter in general. Now we're in panpsychist territory.
Yeah.
So like,
maybe they were right all along.
The panpsychists are freaking right. All these panpsychic theories sounding like nonsense. And then you start to think about it. It's like, well, it ain't obvious. But if you've got a 2,000-year-old book, you know it all. You know how the universe started.
No Wi-Fi, no snacks.
No Wi-Fi, no snacks. God respawn me, baby.
We forgot to respawn me.
Dude, that was so funny. I had to get a dig into religion there, trying to claim that they know how the universe started. Like,
considering that some of the most engagement we've ever seen on this channel comes from religious topics. Get in the comments and fight us.
Fight us.
That'll only help us.
Yeah, screw your 2,000-year-old, 2,000/6,000-year-old.
And we made the promise that if somebody comes at us with some, well, we said questions more than likely, but
yeah,
for this purpose, we'll extend it out to just people who want to really pose a maybe counter argument. I mean, I would love to read through that and respond and
tell us what your theories are on consciousness, because
that's
honestly,
the really interesting question is there.
And what's happening with plants, dude?
What
are the plants doing?
Considering how many conflicting opinions that we brought up just today, how many other opinions are there about what level of consciousness suffices for the definition?
Right. Yeah. Just a quick note on the vast amount of opinions of consciousness. When she was talking to some of the physicists, specifically Sean Carroll, he thought that he didn't think it was quite so mysterious. He thought it was like, he likened it to, there are levels of consciousness, like gradations of consciousness, some with more, some with less. That's not how Annika Harris sees it. She sees it as it either is or isn't. And the only thing that's different is its contents, which is determined by the computational power of the brain.
Yeah.
Sean Carroll was not that of that view. He saw there's gradations of consciousness, and he said, it seems evident that, in the same way that, how did he compare it? In the same way that ice and water, one is frozen and one is not, and there's an infinite spectrum of frozen and unfrozen of temperature in between, at one point, the water is 0% frozen, but it goes to 1% at some point. And he said, in the same way, why can the same thing not happen with consciousness and the level of computation in a brain? Like, or a chair. If you took one atom from this chair, or two atoms from this chair, it would still be a chair, but there's no one point where you take away this atom and it's not a chair anymore. Like, it's happened somewhere in between there, but in the same way, like, you put one atom to in the right shape to start constructing a brain, you know, and another atom in there and another atom in there. There's no point where it's like, oh, there it is. There's consciousness. But
Well, the only problem I'd have with that is clearly we don't know what a 100% consciousness would be, but what would 0% be? That'd be the question.
see, that was her response is, well, she questioned him on this. She said, so you do think that there is a point of zero consciousness? And he said, yeah. And then she said, so there goes from 0 to 1 at some point. And he was like, well yeah. And then she's like, well, that's where it is not obvious.
That's true.
Where does the consciousness, even if it is gradations of consciousness,
Which I can get behind that. That seems fine.
yeah, right. Even if there is gradations of consciousness, there still is a point where it goes from not to is. And it is not obvious as to where that point happens. So that's still the mystery. It's still there.
Yeah.
But for all we know, it could just be somehow emergent from the brain. But if that's the case, then what the plant's doing?
What the plant's doing?
What the plant's doing? So just about at this point, just about any theory of consciousness could be a fat, who knows, but maybe sounds plausible. So let us know your wildest theories. And let us know what you think about the debate. If you haven't seen it, then 2 episodes back, go watch it. It's a long one, but it is an exciting one.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll talk to you next week.
See ya.